Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 329 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is love yourself. Our quote of the day comes to us from Wayne Dyer. If you don't love yourself, nobody will. Not only that, you won't be good at loving anyone else. Loving starts with the self. If you are looking for an uplifting and quick read, make sure you grab a copy of The Positivity Tribe. You can pick up a copy wherever books are sold or by heading on over to thepositivitytribe.com. I had an absolute blast recording today's episode. I only wish that I had recorded our conversations both before and after the actual interview. Ivy Marsh absolutely crushes it, and I know you will enjoy today's episode. Ivy, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Man, it is so great to be on, Chris, and an honor to be able to share with you today. I appreciate who you are in the earth and what you accomplished, man.
I appreciate that. Means a lot coming from you. First question we ask everybody is, are you ready to positively impact at least one person today?
I actually enter the day ready to positively impact, first and foremost, myself. I think you have to keep a yes attitude within yourself if you're really, really going to overflow into other people's lives. And my desire is that everybody I come in contact with, they would not feel positivity, because I don't believe in a positive attitude. I believe in a yes attitude, because that's forward moving all the time. And I want to empower people to know that they can always be moving forward and be full of life, no matter what the circumstances deliver to you.
I love that. And just to touch on one thing you said, because it really stood out, is you have to put yourself in that right frame of mind first and foremost. And I think a lot of people miss that boat where they just have a job or a title and it's like, okay, it's 9 o'clock and I just turn the switch on without having turned themselves on first. And I think what you said is so powerful, because you have to put yourself in the right frame of mind, I feel, if you're going to be successful in impacting people or leading people in the right way.
Yeah, I think what some people do is they hear a podcast, they go to an event, a conference, a self-help pro, whatever, and they get super fired up, and they don't realize that this is a lifestyle. This is not like, hey, I'm gonna get fired up, I'm really gonna try this. Because most of the time what people do is they'll try, and listen, I'm all about trying, but they ultimately will fail. And so I try to tell people, listen, it's a lifestyle. Stop trying and just start training. Train yourself to have a yes attitude. Train yourself to be mentally strong. Train yourself to have emotional depth. And if you self-lead, it's almost a guarantee you'll be able to lead others.
I think that, so stop trying and start training. I love that. And you have to self-lead. And you know, we talk about a lot in the show, accountability. And I think accountability is good. Accountability partners is something I believe in. But before you can be accountable to somebody else or for somebody else, you got to be accountable to yourself first. So I'm glad you touched on that. So we got to jump into the first question, because if not, we probably could go off on tangent. But the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire listeners to never quit. And I was curious if you yourself have either a no-quit story or a really challenging time personally or professionally where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
So really, really quick, my whole life is a you should be quitting story. I grew up in the South, in a family that was what you probably picture Southerners being, a lot of chaos. I was sexually abused as a young child by strangers and family members. And so just thrown into the world with every excuse possible to quit. Ultimately went on to play college ball. My parents got divorced. I did actually quit playing college ball 3 years in because I was doing it for the wrong reasons. But I've had to decide early on, probably when I got married, that, okay, I can make excuses, but I have to understand, and I'm not trying to throw out one-liners, they just help me. Excuses only ever sound great to the people making them. Like, they're almost never, ever valid, but it's amazing what the mind can talk you into being okay, to justify. And so, yeah, I could give you story after story, but honestly, and everybody has a story, but my whole life and just the way I started out, I had every excuse to quit. I came from this family, I came from this town, this county. This is my educational background, which is not great. I was sexually abused. My wife and I decided to have 2 abortions before we got married. Like I had everything stacked against me. So people don't understand you're 1 to 2 decisions away from changing your life forever, but you're 1 to 2 decisions away from changing your life for the worse too.
Mm.
And it's all about a mental state.
First off, I want to just honor you for sharing that, and I love when guests share their personal stories or professional stories where they've quote unquote struggled, because I think that's the best way to learn. I have to ask you, based on sharing your story where multiple times you could have and should have quit, and nobody probably would have said, oh, that's, why would he quit during that? What was it that allowed you or kept you going during those challenging times? Because I think in life, so many people quit when one thing goes wrong, and you just identified a couple areas where you could have quit. What was it? Was it something inside you? Was it something that you continually work on? How did you mentally continue to go when I feel most people probably would have given up?
Well, determination is usually undergirded by motivation. And so if I'm honest, my first motivation was simply out of anger, and I'm going to prove everybody wrong. Um, and you can make anger work for you well, but eventually you just need to know that why, that reason for motivation will burn you up and burn everybody else up. And so I had an epiphany where, and I'm usually pretty open on this, where I met Jesus, and not the Jesus of your grandma or of a Baptist church, but the Jesus of the Bible. And that teaching and who he is as a person in my life helped me restructure, reform, and rebirth the why that I was doing everything. I really had to get past my hurt and my anger, because that is a death sentence motivator at some point. And so now my motivation is more of honestly to I kind of have this little mantra I tell myself all the time: forever faithful, forever forward, forever full of life. And that was kind of Jesus's mission statement when he came on the earth. He said, I came to bring everybody life and life to the full. So my motivation today, when I interact with my wife or my children or other people, really is that they would experience life to the full, that they would experience honestly love. Um, and it's, you have to, like we started out, you have to love yourself before you can love other people. My motivation was anger because I hated myself. But once I began to like myself and honestly fall in love with myself, which sounds arrogant and self-serving, it's actually not. It's very, very important to you to be able to truly serve people and have a correct motivation.
Wow. Could you repeat that mantra one more time?
Sure. Forever faithful, forever forward, forever full of life.
I love that. And what you said after that is, I think, is so important, is you have to love yourself, and it's not, loving in the sense of I'm amazing, I'm perfect, I'm better than other people. And
Yeah.
I personally, to be transparent with our listeners, I struggled with understanding that, and it was more, I think, of a mental block when, whether it was books I was reading or different speakers I've heard, love yourself. And I took it to the extreme of, again, being arrogant and I'm better than you or I deserve more than you. But when I actually took a step back and really looked at it, it's so powerful, because before you love yourself, how can you love somebody else, whether it's a spouse, a child, a parent? So maybe if you wouldn't mind just briefly touching on that, because I think it's really, really important.
Yeah. The over extreme idea, which I've fallen into before, much like you, is love yourself to a point where I'm the best. I look in the mirror, there's nothing wrong with me. And what I do in the course of the day, it's all right. And if everybody would think like me, they'd be great. Um, that's just that's another way to hate yourself under the guise of love. Because you don't allow yourself to grow. You don't allow yourself to improve. You don't allow people to speak into your life. So to truly love yourself is to want the best for yourself, to appreciate how you're made, the way you think, but also, when you have a child, you want the absolute best for them. So you're willing to do anything you can to help them. Well, when you love yourself, you're willing to do anything that you can and allow other people to do for you to help you become the best version of you. And you get to see yourself in a sober light. You celebrate your good points, but you also can see your weak points and some of the steps that you need to make to improve. And so there is a balance, but truly loving yourself is wanting the best for yourself and willing to do whatever you can to help you be the best version of you.
I think that's so important, and the best version of you. And we all have those hashtags, live your best life, and they're hokey in some ways, but the way you described it, I think that's perfect, because that's what it means. It's not comparing yourself to somebody. It's not saying you're better than a neighbor or a coworker. You're just ultimately saying to yourself, I want to be the best version of myself, first and foremost for me, because before I can be that for my child or a wife or a husband or a friend, I need to do it for me. And I think so many people don't take the time and the effort and the energy of really trying to become the best version of themselves for them. I think they try to be the best version, but they tie it to sales or a house or a car. And I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying, it's not nice to have those things, but that's not the most important thing. Those, I think, to me, are afterthoughts. If you're a good person, you work hard, then those things come after.
Mm-hmm. Comparison is a legit killer in our lives, from a motivation standpoint and from an ability to perform standpoint. Because the truth is, if I'm going to compare, my typical response in comparing is I want to find somebody that I'm way better than to make myself feel better. And then I'm going to find somebody that's way better than me, and they're going to make me feel terrible that I can never achieve. And honestly, the problem within male culture, and I know you have a lot of listeners that are female, so forgive me for my French, but most of the time we want to have a dick measuring contest somehow. Well, there's always somebody bigger, better, stronger, faster than you. And so if you spend your whole life comparing, you're going to really settle for average, because you're not realizing your true competition looks you in the mirror every single day, and you're the only one that can honestly grade yourself. And don't get caught up in comparing. Just be willing to love you in such a way that, again, you can look at yourself in an honest place and go, you know what, I'm better than I used to be, but I'm not as good as I'm going to get, and I'm willing to stretch that gap.
The awesome part of doing these podcasts is, I know a bunch about the guest. I don't know, obviously, how they're going to answer certain questions, nor where we're going to go. But how you just described the comparison game, it hit me almost like a 2x4 in the forehead of, you can always find somebody or something that you're better than, but you can always find something or somebody that's better than you. So ultimately, it's a lose-lose situation, because if you really want to find somebody that you're quote unquote better than, you can find them. There are people that are down in their luck, people struggling, but on the flip side, there are people that are ahead of you or more successful. And the mental picture I saw was just like kind of sitting in the middle of a seesaw, and both sides are going up and down, but you're just sitting in the middle, and you're like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going up or down. I'm kind of stuck.
Yep.
So a fun question we ask each guest is, if you had to define yourself, but you could only choose one word, what word did you pick?
This may sound surprising to you, but knowing the little bit you know about me, quirky.
I like that. You got to expand briefly for a second.
Okay. I'm never what anybody expects when they interact with me. So obviously my answer is, okay, well, he's driven, he's disciplined, he's determined, he's the 3 Ds of life that keep you going. And I am that, but I'm also lazy. I'm also have a tendency to coast. I like poetry, and I can draw and paint. I'm an artist. And so coming from a sports background, military background, cop background, everybody has this picture of who I am. But the truth is, I'm quirky because I'm so much of what you don't think I am. And I celebrate those parts of me as much as I celebrate the drivenness part of it.
I love that. And I think that's enjoying life. And people that know me, and many of our listeners know that I'm focused. I fall in line with those 3 Ds. I played and coached college sports, but I have that crazy nutty side. I have that side of me that I can recite ridiculous movies that have no purpose whatsoever other than making me laugh. When Wedding Crashers came out, for example, I saw it back to back nights in the movie theater because I absolutely loved it that much, and I literally laughed just as hard both times. So I love that. Before we started our conversation and we exchanged a couple messages prior as well, we spoke about grit and mental toughness, and I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind maybe just expanding on how somebody, a listener, could maybe improve or add more grit or more mental toughness to either their personal or professional life. And as you and I were talking offline, I think one thing that 2020 and the beginning so far of 2021 has taught us is that, life's going to throw you curveballs, but if you can control how gritty you are and also your mental toughness. So maybe if you could touch on that briefly.
Sure. Well, I mentioned, drive, determination, and discipline, which I think are the three key D's to life. But most people misunderstand discipline. You take somebody who is an avid weightlifter, they would look at somebody who's overweight and they would go, who's overweight and likes to read books? They would go, that person's not disciplined. The overweight guy would look at the gym rat and go, well, you don't like to read books, so you're not disciplined. Most people mistake discipline as they grade themselves to compare to other people. And what I would even tell the gym rat is you're not disciplined because you go to the gym, because you're doing what you like to do. If you're sedentary and you read books, you're not disciplined because you're reading books. You're reading books because it's what you like to do. Discipline is a person's ability to do what they dislike or hate for a sustained period of time to have the life they want. That's what discipline is. And so to develop that, I think you have to have, everybody's like, grit. Are you born with it? Can you develop it? I think you can develop it over time. I think willpower, which is another word for grit, everybody has, but we only have a limited source of it because willpower is a muscle that can be trained. And willpower simply is the internal ability to make a decision to manifest the unseen into the seen. Like, what are my core values? What do I believe in? Well, all of that's unseen. Willpower is ability to make that seen or manifest into our life. And so I have an acronym that I try to help myself with, and everything that I ever teach, the only reason I share it is because it helped me. I was working on me so hard for so many years because I was jacked up and I needed to improve. And grit, the acronym is guts, resilience, initiative, and tenacity. Really, and in its simplest form, that's just what grit is. It's the guts to make the decision when nobody else will. It's clarity. It's I know what I want. It's having an end game. It's guts is boldness. And I'd say in leadership, what's the difference between a leader and an influencer? A leader has the guts to make the decision the influencer won't. That's the only difference. I mean, there's several other ones, but that's the big difference. Resilience is, man, I failed, but I got back up. I have the ability to recover when honestly other people probably would stay down. I'm not afraid to learn. Resilience is about improving all the time, and having endurance and perseverance and all those words we throw around. But at the end of the day, it's resilience. And then initiative is willing to be first. Like, I'm okay. You never ever have enough information to be comfortable with doing most things. So initiative is I've gotten all the information I can get, but now it's time to pull the trigger. Well, to me, guts, resilient, and initiative, none of these are compartments. They all coexist together. And so initiative is just that ability to, all right, I'm going into this dark room and I don't know what's in there, but I have the guts to do it. I have the resilience if it goes bad. And then lastly, tenacity. Man, that's just to keep going this in your thought process. I'm going to keep knocking on this door and keep knocking on this door and keep knocking on this door. Now, listen, everything in your life that's a gift to you can also become a curse to you. There are some people who are very tenacious to a fault. The reason that door's not opening is because that's a stupid door. Don't open it. And some people just keep pushing, which is fine. I'm that way sometimes too. So all of those things, guts, resilience, initiative, tenacity, that's what you have to get grit. And you just have to put yourself in environments where you're not the best, but you're not the worst. You can see yourself clearly and keep moving forward and improving little increments at a time. And over time, that builds grit, that builds willpower, that builds determination. And you should, in my opinion, if you're a person that's serious about growth, you should have more willpower, more grit in the next 3 months than you had today. You should be able to sustain more, do more, continue, and not fail as much on your staying power if you're really serious about growth.
I love that, and I think the way you described it is very clear. And I've never heard that acronym of grit before, and I think it's always interesting when people have those different things. But what you said when you started this is you teach and you speak about things that have worked for you, and I think that's so important because so many people just read something or see something from somebody else, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but they try to then make it fit for them, and I don't think that's always the best way. I think it's important to learn from others. I think it's important to figure things out, not to follow and just copy and paste fully. But I'm glad how you touch on that. And the word discipline is interesting, and I want to get your perspective on this. Is probably 2 or 3 years ago, I watched a YouTube video with Will Smith, and Will Smith broke down discipline in a really interesting way, and he spoke about how when we're kids, especially with our parents or in school, we talk about I'm gonna discipline you, or if you're not listening at home, a mother or father or somebody will say, Ivy, you're not disciplined, so I'm going to teach you some discipline. And I think we have this misconception of it because for me, like you said, it's discipline. The way I would define it is doing the things that you don't want to do, but you need to do them if you want to achieve X, Y, or Z. So I'm really glad that you touched on this. I know that you're familiar with the famous quote by Jim Rohn, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most of your time with." We've been asking this question probably the last 3 or 4 months. If I had the opportunity to put you at a table with any 5 people and you could level up any 5 people, dead or alive, who would you pick?
Oh man, my wife and I just talked about this about a week ago on a date night. We're like, we literally said, I think we said 3, and mine was Teddy Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, my great grandfather. That was the 3 that I said, and then I would probably want to also bring to the table Gary V. I just think he's very interesting, and he talks a lot. So, um, no offense, Gary V, if you're listening. And then probably, and I hate to, the assumption is because what I do for a living, of course, you're going to be spiritual, but I would like to talk with James, who was Jesus's half brother. That would be my 5 people.
That's awesome. And not that I know either of them well, but I think with those 5 people, watching Gary V and Abraham Lincoln interact would be fascinating. I'm curious if Abraham would just lean over and take his top hat and just knock Gary in the mouth and say, "Hey, will you just stop talking for about 5 minutes?" And now, Gary V, I know you listen to all of our shows, so please don't take offense to that. So we also believe in the value of books, and I'm curious if you're currently reading something, or perhaps you've read something recently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
I am reading a book right now, and the author's name is escaping me, but it's called The Masculine Jesus. It's a really, really good book for men to read. I mean, I can text you the author's name later. It just left my.
Is it a new book?
Yeah, it's about a year old.
Okay, no, I've not heard that. I appreciate that. So we're going to jump over to what we call our hot seat questions, and the only request we have of you is you spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
Last meal, you can pick absolutely anything. What do you pick?
Steak, potatoes.
Favorite smell?
Tobacco.
Favorite sport?
Football.
Do you have an all-time favorite team?
I don't.
Favorite movie?
Encino Man.
Great movie. Favorite author.
Um, I don't have one.
He's good. I've read a lot of his stuff. What is the favorite app you have on your phone?
Voice recorder.
What's the background picture on your phone?
A shield that we use in a course called Warrior Evolution that has our mantra on it.
And what is, or do you have a favorite book?
I do. Honestly, it's the Bible. I hate to say that, but it is.
No.
The reason I hate to say that is because everybody knows that's what I'm going to say, but it's true.
And do you have an all-time favorite quote?
Just my mantra. Like it just helps me so much. Forever faithful, forever forward, forever full of life.
Now, I didn't ask before, but how did you come up with that? Was it something that took time, or did something that just came to you, or how did that come to fruition?
It's kind of it. You know, there's a military mantra out there. You know, forever faithful, which is cool and that's fine. But for me, I like to have phrases and things that I can go to help me meditate and focus my mind on excellent and great things all the time. Because life is more of a mind game than it is a circumstance game. And so I like to stay in a really solid, mindful place, mindful of my surroundings, my own emotional state, other people's state when I meet them. So, in order for me to stay in this state of being faithful, and that for me, that means to my core values, yes, to my wife, yes, to my kids, and to the God I serve, but to my core values and my belief, like forever be faithful no matter what comes into your life. Just be faithful. You're going to be okay. Forever moving forward. Don't ever take a step back. Like there's rarely a good time to retreat. Um, and I'm not talking about in the context of war. I'm talking about in life in general. It's almost never a good idea to turn around and go the way that you just came. Even if it's wrong, okay, make a left turn, but keep moving forward. Um, and forever full of life. Um, Man, I want to squeeze everything that life has available to me, and that means different for me than I'm sure it does other people. But I don't want to. I don't want to just exist in any moment of a day, a week, or a month. Like I want to. I want to taste the sweet things of life, and for me, that's personal to me. And you may not think the same way that I do about that, but when I'm in front of my wife, man, I want to enjoy everything about her in that moment. When I'm with my kids, I want to be fully present all the time so I can be full of life. And so that's kind of why it's mine.
I love that, and taking the military context out of it, because I'm not going to speak on something I don't know. What you said hit me. It's never taking a step back, and where I take that is it's okay to stop. It's okay to reassess. Maybe I need to go this way or that way. Pause for a second, rehydrate, whatever it is. But it's never good to go back. And I think the way you said that is so powerful. We spoke before about your 100-hour course you have for men, and I know you have one coming up in April as well as October. If you wouldn't mind briefly telling our listeners about that, so any of our male listeners are interested, would love for them to reach out to you about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for allowing me to share. Warrior Evolution is a 100-hour course. I'm an instructor, obviously, with ex-military background, ex-police background. I had a leadership company. My other instructor is a financial advisor, also ex-officer in the military. My third instructor is a former Navy SEAL and firearms instructor. So you can imagine what that looks like because there are a lot of courses out there, and it is physical. But more than that, we take a guy on a mental, emotional, and spiritual journey to help him understand that he can have it all. Because a lot of guys compartmentalize their life and they are really good businessmen, but the truth is they're not great fathers. They're really good fathers, but they don't know how. And most men never really want to do something they're not good at. So we help them understand that they can have it all. You can be a great businessman. You can make money. You can be a good husband. You can be a good father. You can have to decompartmentalize and begin to kill the third. Can you try to do that in 100 hours? You finish the course. It's usually you don't finish. That's when you get started. You get put on a brotherhood of guys, a team, like Team Alpha, Team Bravo, Team whatever, and you become part of a mastermind. And you continue to do life in this brotherhood. And we meet a couple of times a year and hang out. Everybody flies in. And so it's a really powerful brotherhood to help men understand who they are and why they feel the way that they do, why they have the desires that they do, because you're men and men are created a certain way. And so we celebrate that and help guys achieve what they really want to achieve.
That's awesome. And what's the best way for our listeners to find out not only more about that, but also to connect with you and find out more about you?
Sure. You can go to iam4.tv. That's our website where you find Warrior Evolution. You can follow us on Instagram, which is iam4.tv, or you can follow me on Instagram and just DM me, which is iv.marsh, iv.marsh on Instagram. And I'm on there all the time. So
I appreciate that. And wanted to ask you a question during these challenging times. I wanted to know, are there one or two people that you'd like to maybe recommend to our listeners that you follow on social media that put out positive and uplifting content?
Well, the mutual connection that you and I have, I think Steve Weatherford does a really, really good job at bridging the gap of what practical faith looks like, what business looks like, what leadership looks like, what home looks like. So I love Steve. So I always tell people, make sure you connect with him. And then, there's several people on Instagram, not that I would recommend, but most people in the leadership vein or in the vein that you're in or I'm in, they're all great. I guess I recommend this. I don't recommend another person. I recommend this. Be mature enough to eat the fish, but spit out the bones. Not everybody is good at everything. So be able to take what they're good at, apply that to your life, but don't try to mirror somebody in everything that they do. Be wise enough to see what they're not good at and kind of discard that.
I think that is so powerful the way you described that, because I think typically people follow one or two people and it's like, I'm going to follow everything this person says. And the reality is no one person is amazing at everything. And I think it's important to look at their strengths. And I think the other perspective on that too is it's okay to follow 2, 3, or 4 people and pick the certain things in their area that really connect with you. So I'm glad you touched on that. And then last question we ask everybody is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
Yes. And I don't care who you are that's listening. I don't care if you're male, female, married, single, young, old. Here's what I desperately need you to understand. The way that you are made is great. You need to know that God did not make a mistake. Your upbringing, your background, you may feel disqualified. You may feel like you have an excuse. And whatever that looks like, I apologize for whatever trauma you're incurred, but that doesn't dictate who you are. Your identity is sound and secure in who you were created to be. And I would just encourage every listener to celebrate that. It doesn't mean you're perfect. Doesn't mean you don't need to improve. It doesn't mean you need to get better, but fall in love with you. I invite you on a spiritual journey, whatever that looks like for you. Be willing to chase truth no matter where truth is willing to take you, because true is true no matter what. Have the guts to follow it wherever you're going to land. And then, man, just be nice. People are just not nice in this world. They're not honoring. They're not considerate. To me, there's no person that I encounter in a day that's worth having a bad day. Like just own your attitude, be nice, be cordial, love yourself, pursue truth, and I promise you, you will end up in a much better place than you ever dreamed you would.
I think that's a fantastic way to end today's episode, and I definitely recommend our listeners to reach out to you, connect with you on social media, but also for any men listening, definitely follow up with Ivy about the April and October events, and I hope that you and I can connect again soon.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to episode number 329. Ivy touched upon so many powerful points, and I know that personally I had so many takeaways. I love how he broke down comparison being a killer and how we should never take a step backwards in life. Ivy broke down the word grit, G standing for guts, R resilience, I initiative, and T tenacity. Keep going. Absolutely great stuff. In his parting words, Ivy mentioned how we should fall in love with ourselves, but also to be nice. So my challenge to you today is just that. Be nice. Be nice to someone, a stranger, a friend, or maybe even a loved one. But do it for that one person, and do it with zero expectations in return. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.